Hello, and welcome to the War in the Pacific. It is the 8th of December in the ongoing campaign between Wirraway as Japan and Encircled as the Allies. I'm your host, Wirraway, or technically Wirraway Ace. I expect this to be a bit of a tough turn for the forces of Japan because the Allies have a chance to react. I have a couple submarines operating right now in the Straits of Malacca, and a number more on the way. In this case, I-121 misses a shot at an AMC leaving Singapore. Say, I made a high-speed run with a division of destroyers down to try to cut off any of his undamaged ships making for Melbourne. Looks like he sent a destroyer, but Stewart slips by. I expected him to send a lot of forces to Monado. As a light cruise, I'm sorry, a light transport of mine sunk from damage caused by Marine coastal gunfire at Wake. Jinsu is bombarding Kwanton at night. See if he jumped in any swordfish or wildebeest there to attack Kotobaro. Doesn't look that way. Oh, I-17 gets a rare hit on an American destroyer. She goes under. My landing's at Wenchao. 3 divisions are landing here and 3 separate task forces. There's not a lot of opportunities for the Allies to intervene there. Small little invasion task force at Ternate. I want to continue to limit his options for having seaplanes patrolling and keeping an eye on me. There was some risk he might send a destroyer or two there, anticipating the move, but doesn't look like he did. Looks like he probably sent everything to Monado. We'll see how that plays out. I expect that he may jump in T-40s also to Monado. Uh, he might use them in a naval attack role. Their speed makes them very hard for anything other than zeros to deal with on cap. But of course, they're not trained in naval strikes, so they don't hit much. My cover force for my invasion of Legion runs across a couple small AKLs. Hopefully they didn't expend much of their ammunition on that. Okay, now let's see if the trap bears some fruit. So we catch an AK and another one. And another one. Judging by how far they moved, these should have been 14-knot ships. Timbre is operating off Wake. K-17 misses the fast-moving Jinsu. I-124 puts a torpedo into a transport off Legazpi. couple more of the 14-knot transports. Okay, my destroyers are now out of ammunition. Isabel, keeping one of my submarines head down. Okay. Oh, we lost a Mavis to Cap. So definitely P-40s there, but not perhaps a naval attack, but instead a cap trap. So this is what I wanted to explore on this video, is your first hints at Encircled tactics. And we'll see how this plays out, but it looks like he's going to use his fighters to try to cap above some of his surface ships and try to attract my well-trained naval air crews to death. We've tried to anticipate this. We'll see how he did and how I did. I was expecting his ships to make this run up the Straits of Malacca, and I was expecting that he would try to cap them as they make that run. And it looks like, again, he put cap over his ships at Monado, which is not surprising, and I think that'll play out okay. We have Ruho about 6 hexes away. He will probably strike, but her escorts should be escorted. Her naval torpedo bombers should be escorted adequately, so losses should be modest. We'll see. Looks like my Nels are fragmenting in their attack. Okay, so I was expecting him to cap over Cibola, but he didn't. Okay. Oh. Instead, he's capped just 1 hex north of Singapore. Very tricky. I have escorts, but he has a ton of fighters. This will probably not end up well for the forces of Japan. And we'll talk about it later. I made a mistake. I have an air headquarters. It's Patini, but I chose poorly. I didn't load the torpedoes before I loaded them on the Magic Move task force. I could have, should have. And so, for reasons that aren't entirely clear, the air headquarters couldn't provide torpedoes this turn. So not only did I lose Nels, but they were carrying bombs and they weren't likely to be very effective, certainly against warships anyway. So poor decisions on my part. Okay. Betties are, I anticipated cat traps in the Philippines, so I went elsewhere with my naval air on Tokayo, or at Tokayo. They are hitting Chinese, at one good Chinese core, trying to make it out of the Yellow River Valley here. Okay, Kate's strike for a second day at the port of Sydney. So wasn't a lot left in harbor there, but they do get Bishopdale and Erling Bovig along with Westralia and AMC. So that's decent. And of course, no losses unless they're ops losses. Sally's strike that same Chinese core. decent damage. I mean, probably by the end of the day, would have reduced its combat power by about 15%. Not too bad. So I was wondering if he would jump P40s into Hong Kong. He did not. Just going to break up his advance on Aichang as he did to my retreat yesterday. A lot of purpose in retrospect to this attack. Um, I mean, I'd like to destroy that base force before it can make it to Molming, but with armor advancing, that's probably not a problem anyway. Uh, and I want that airfield, so uh, I can grab it with paratroopers if if it makes sense, depending on what happens on the Malaya. So I'm not sure there's a lot of purpose to that strike with ANS. You should always use your bombers with a purpose. I sometimes don't have a clear purpose. Or I think I do, but in retrospect, it isn't a good one. Okay, Oscar's sweeping an empty airspace. So far, nothing disastrous. Looks like my invasion task forces all got to their objectives without intercept. And other than that cap trap just north of Singapore, I've avoided. Oh, yes, kingfishers attacking. So Ruho has some clods out on cap. Not that that really is. Kingfishers weren't likely to hit a lot. Dutch attacking that small landing force at turn 8. Ooh, oh, poor wildebeest. So the wildebeest went unescorted after my amphibious task force at Sinkwong, and I had zeros on cap from Hosho nearby. Ah, B-17s raiding my ports. This isn't really a big deal. A lot of players do this. Uh, it's pretty easy to put a small amount of nates up over your ports, and many of them have decent AA. So I didn't have nates up over this particular port and could have. Uh, all my others are pretty well covered, so that was a mistake on my part that he exploited. But again, it's just not a big deal. You just can't be terrified of the B-17s, at least at this stage. Okay, some vowels going after small AP. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. He had D40s, and my clods are gonna be roughly handled, but let's see how this goes. Not particularly well. Lost 5 aircraft to 0. Not good. Uh-oh. Unescorted Nels now get slaughtered. So what am I up to? 10 Ls now, maybe higher. Not a good turn. That was an interesting move by him to advance his ships towards my air cover and then use every available buffalo to cap him. And I expected he would do something like that, but I guessed incorrectly which base he would use. So I'll have to be more careful. I also have more fighters available in the coming turn here. No airstrike from the KB. She must be weathered in. Adding insult to injury to how this turn is going. Okay. More Nels into the breach. To really no avail. Another 4. Lost a couple Oscar 1As. Losing the 1As isn't a big deal. The pilots are experienced, though. Hate to lose them, and those one-sided exchanges wasn't their fault, though. Good move by Encircled that I didn't properly anticipated and then used incorrect tactics to deal with. I don't know what this is doing. Ground attack. Why? Hmm. I thought I had set everybody's range to 6. They're escorted, so it couldn't be ugly. But this is clearly a mistake in my settings because I intended to set all my strike aircraft to 6 to avoid just exactly this circumstance, which was entirely anticipatable. I must have missed one of the units, and that may end up costing. Yes, the fighters really got in amongst the Kates, which is, yeah, ugly. Ugly, ugly, but that was a flick mistake, not a psychological mistake. Okay, his cap's a little worn down this time. Let's see what happens. So they got a torpedo into Boise. It penetrated the belt armor and also caused engine damage. I was able to see that in the reports. So that's a decent outcome. Lost Claude, um, and I think a total of 3. So 3 Claudes and 3 Kates in exchange for getting a good torpedo hit on Boise. Boise isn't dead, but taking on water and with engine damage, she isn't likely to be an effective part of any of the remaining fighting, which just leaves essentially Houston and Moriartis, the light cruiser, as the effective cruisers available to both the British and the British, Dutch, and Americans. So the ABDA is down to 2 effective cruisers. So this is what I wanted to happen here, that he rushed most of his Asiatic fleet units that weren't in Manila when it was bombed, which was Houston and Boise, um, a light cruiser and destroyers that were at Tarakan and off Samarinda at the beginning of the campaign, they all rushed in to try to ambush my amphibious task force, but I pulled the amphibious task force back after showing the move and instead let carrier strike aircraft go in. He capped with T-40s, excellent move, uh, but still sort of a draw. Um, Boise damaged and uh, 5 Japanese aircraft lost, maybe 6. So that was a fair exchange. Um, the 2 cat traps, one off Java. Oh, Timbre gets a working torpedo into one of my empty transports leaving wake. I-121 sinks a small AP. Isabel still there going. Okay, so my invasion task force goes in at Ambone. Nachi is there to draw the fire from the coastal gun battalion, which she appears to do pretty effectively. My units go in at Kegian, unopposed at C. Dutch Harbor. Sinkalong. Second of the division landings should be at Winshow. Brigade landing at Rabaul. Third division landing at Winshow. All these look in decent shape. Paratroopers grab Batten Island. Okay, that's the end. Well, definitely a rough turn, but uh, Encircled used his fighters well. I anticipated most of the moves, but was sloppy in both my counter and the settings, paying attention to settings. So let's just jump in and figure out what happened because I fully anticipated this, yet still they blundered into. So those were properly set to a range of 6, but the Kates on Zuikaku somehow I missed. They were at 7. 4 pilots KIA. 8 missing. I'll get some of those back. This is not a devastating blow, but didn't didn't need to happen. Just one of the mistakes in war because everything else should have been properly set. Yeah, yeah. So Shokaku was set properly. So I just missed a range setting. Um, so yeah, he ended up putting a ton of fighters into Jorobaru, um, and moved his only good cruiser, only remaining good cruiser with destroyers here. I think the plan was because I was showing a Mersing invasion. Um, so he moved them here instead of leaving them in Singapore. Yeah, so not sure whether that was intentional as a cap trap. Again, I thought he would run up the Strait of Malacca and uh, at full speed and go to one of these two bases. This one's the easiest to reach for his slower ships and has air capacity of 2. So this is where I was expecting him to try to provide air cover. I did not anticipate this properly. Okay, well, let's take a look at the butcher's bill here. 17 Nells in air to air, ugly 13 Kates, so 30 strike aircraft. Uh, not a disastrous day, but a bad day. Um, Wildebeest 11 is good. Lost quite a few Oscar 1As, some more Kates. So really 35 plus some Claudes. Shot down some Dutch Buffaloes. That's good. Lost to 0. Shut down Demons. Walrus. So uh, that should have been Prince of Wales going down there. Catalina was destroyed near there. Interesting. I lost the Mavis too. Okay, he's actually ahead in aircraft losses. Uh, that's the sign of a good allied player at this point. So um, that'll that's good to know. But there are counters to this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to try to force a Mersing landing. I have armor units that will cut off this brigade. They will, if I can keep them from getting bombed, so I'll cap them. I have zeros. I have the kind of coup now. By the way, I could have set them to cap uh, if I'd been, if, I wanted to give them a rest, but that would have given the B-17s a bit of a surprise. But I'll move Kainku in to Latini. They'll snap the armor units as they advance because if they can get into this hex next turn, no way this regiment escapes. This regiment isn't going to escape, and this one isn't going to escape. So that leaves uh, about 40% of the combat power of the 2 divisions plus the 2 Aussie brigades that are available to the British in Singapore that won't make it back into Singapore. So wrapping the AA units and other units in here by doing immersing landing and then cutting the peninsula or using my airborne troops, which are now positioned at Saigon, to drop uh, on either of these two bases to try to stop rail movement here isn't really necessary. I don't have to take a risk. I need to protect, I still have quite a bit of troops being landed. And so I'm going to have to protect them from the wild plan that he might uh, send his one good light cruiser, or certainly some of his more disposable destroyers, in to try to destroy my ships while they're still offloading troops. So I'll have to form up surface task forces, ad hoc surface task forces, because I don't have a lot. I have a handful of good destroyers, and I can get a light cruiser. He's no match in a typical action to Moriartis. She's really just a destroyer leader, but uh, I think I can put together an ad hoc force that if he does decide to risk this, um, I can I can stop him. Meanwhile, we're going to continue to move on Java and reorganize our amphibious task forces as we go. Um, I will eventually put more fighters on board Zuikaku and Shokaku. And since Shokaku's Kates were pretty beat up, um, I'll land those and fly in more zeros. So eventually I can put, my goal is to have about 80 fighters between Hosho, Zuikaku, Shokaku, 80 zeros to cover my landings on Java coming up in just a couple turns. We'll complete our landings at Kagian and hopefully take the base. Should have enough combat power. He's landed in good order. Um, and let's see how much ammo Chokai used. She's okay. So they're not in critical shape. So Chokai, the Chokai task force, and the two fast battleships will move down to join up with this amphibious task force. I could force Ambone, I'm sorry, Minato at this point, but I don't really need Minato. If I have Kagion, I'll have turn 8. Um, I'll have Ambone. Um, I think what I'll probably do is instead come around and just move on Kendari, and then from Kendari to Makassar, and with my forces all synchronized with the invasion of Java. So all the ships in this area will have nowhere to go except perhaps try to run due east. So we'll put naval search aircraft into this region, have to anyway, because his carriers, uh, we've got naval search at Wake, but his carriers could swing wide. So we'll add naval search, long range naval search to this entire zone, and then put light reaction forces like these torpedo boats, and I've got more on the way, and destroyers, and anything that tries to go this way will mop up through vectoring in essentially destroyers on them. This is a feint, so I'm going to break off the torpedo boats to cover this eastern escape route, and this amphibious task force will simply turn around and go away. This is a feint, though I'm using these babs for naval search. Looks like, yeah, it looks like he set up a cap trap right here with his P40s, presumably. Um, we won't fall for that. We'll watch. Some players will buy out the P40s. So he's obviously already bought out one squadron and fly them into Hong Kong to try to catch the bombers here. So next turn we won't bomb Hong Kong after 2 turns in a row. We've damaged the airfield adequately. It's not like he's going to build forts in the short run. Instead, we'll use our air power um, on this division here at Wenshao to support the attack here, though in ×3 terrain, it doesn't do a lot of good. We'll continue to vary our attacks here, but we shouldn't have any problem getting our division out of Aicheng without having to face um, the Chinese horde. Meanwhile, armor is on its way. We bought out all the armor units we could afford, um, and our armor thrust will primarily be from this zone towards Nanyang, and we'll either go up the Xi'an Highway or Ankang or both. We're also going to probe out to the north. I don't usually do this, but um, I'll give it a try. I mean, there's oil out here, but many players say they can never get it to flow. So uh, that's more of a distraction. We'll continue to try to take Dutch Harbor and then expand through the Aleutians and set up air search here. So if his carriers decide to go north and raid, often they'll try to raid Hokkaido. So we're building up AA and barrage balloons where we have large enough airfields and ports together to try to protect this. But I'm not going to spend a lot. I'm not going to pull zeros into this. Here, Rabaul, we'll take Rabaul. We've got 2 heavy cruiser task forces. There's an American cruiser, Louisville, I think. He could be in this zone right now. There's a light cruiser, Adelaide, I think. So we've got enough combat power to handle this, and we're going to push down the Solomons quickly and uh, take New Caledonia. Uh, should be able to have that wrapped up within a week or so. Yeah, maybe a little longer, but not much. So we talked about it, insult to injury. Now the weather's clear. The carriers were weathered in. I'll just check the settings. Air search, naval attack, range 7. Yeah, so they just didn't fly. Weather. So we'll do our best to mop up here. And then we'll see. Depending on how this operation goes, um, I don't want to chase a bunch of 10-point AKs all over the place. And I think Queen Elizabeth's already made her high speed run out. So she didn't go south, or if she did, my destroyers missed her. So no use spending a lot of effort here, but Sydney and its light industry is essentially unprotected at this point. No fighters, no AA, unless he probably try to move it in. So we'll work over his light industry uh, and support and cover our operations in Nouméa before rearming and refueling uh, carrier divisions 1 and 2. And he didn't interdict at all here, so we should have the Gilberts pretty well under control next turn, unless Louisville went this way, which she sometimes does, um, and shows up. But we've got some 35-knot destroyer task forces here to tangle with Louisville or other ships if they show up. And so any losses we take should be small, and again should have the Gilberts wrapped up next turn. So that's it. Um, Again, good turn for Encircled. The full nice tactics he used, um, and one I didn't anticipate adequately. So this will be a great game. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to our next chance talk.